Was the defense really that bad on Sunday? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKlosky WTSB. We are your credential members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, Evan is on 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app. And I am here with you 5 days a week along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. The Bucs are preparing to meet with the only team in the NFL that is more injured than they are, and predictions all coming up in a little bit. But Evan, let's start this one off with 600 penalty minutes between the Lightning and Panthers in 2 preseason games. Is that what we're
it was 322 plus 186. So we're talking about 500-ish, right?
Oh, over 500. I was thinking that the first one was up over 200 penalty minutes, but yeah, 8,000 ejections. The Panthers are just football, hockey. It doesn't matter. If you're the Panthers, you're terrible and we all hate you. But we are not here to talk about hockey. You can check out Locked On Lightning for all of that. We're going to start this one off with more reaction to the 38-35 win over the Seattle Seahawks, where Evan, you and I, we both picked Seattle. I already ate my crow on Sunday. I'm sure viewers are going to make their voices heard in the comment section on YouTube. But this was yet another nail biter coming down to the final minute, due in large part to the defense being absolutely atrocious, and then Baker Mayfield in the offense being absolutely amazing. So let's get your biggest takeaways from this game, and I do want to start on the defensive side of the ball, because I had to kind of take a step back and say, you know what? This is not indicative of who they are. It was a bad performance, but I don't think the defense is actually that bad.
Yeah, first, let it be a reminder that your gut instinct is probably the right instinct. That was an unfortunate change by me on Friday, being scared by the injury report. As you all heard, if you're listening to this, my initial responses in our WTSP Wednesday episode. Let's just have amnesia about my Friday change. Okay. Yeah, of course that the Bucs are not that bad. And certainly you were watching, let's say the Seahawks and Buccaneers play again in the postseason. We are not going to look back at this game and say, oh, copy and paste, right? Both teams were in shambles defensively. The Seahawks were missing 2 critical secondary pieces, very important to what they do. The Bolts. So you got my head in the Lightning. The Bucs. The Bucs were also missing critical pieces as well. Benjamin Morrison, Jamel Dean, Christian Izien. That was the issue I'm flipping, is that I didn't know if Todd Bowles can run what he wants to run, moving Parrish to the outside, Tyke to nickel. And honestly, you brought in Vildor, so you did a little bit more than what I thought you were going to do. And it just wasn't as tight, right? It wasn't as clean. So factor in both of these offenses were scoring pretty fast, and you didn't really have time to catch your breath and figure out what was going wrong before you were being thrust into the action. I think a couple of times in a year you're just going to be caught in one of these shootouts where it's just you need the offense one day, and we kind of, we've seen it already in the Atlanta game where the defense had to step up for the offense at points because the offense was super bad. So we had one of our top 3 performances on offense and one of our bottom 3 performances on defense come in one game. So that is when, and I say our as viewers, like watching the Buccaneers, that's kind of how I view it. We got extremes of both. And I'm not ready to hit the panic button on the defense, but certainly against the Niners, it's a problem considering Shanahan always crushes Todd Bowles, and I do not expect him, even at full boat, to have issues with Todd Bowles because we have a history of watching Shanahan against Todd Bowles. So, I can't – until I see it, I can't think otherwise.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be an issue, and we will get into that matchup coming up in a little bit. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. And one of the things that I kept stressing was when you don't have Dean or Morrison, like if you have one of the two, the defense is going to operate more like it's supposed to. And it wasn't there for the defense, and not to mention, you have to tip your hat, right? I mean, both quarterbacks in this game, because Seattle's defense isn't that bad either. And they were missing.
They're a great defense too under Mike. Both of these teams are trending in the right the right direction defensively, and then both of them are like, "What the hell was that?"
Well, and both quarterbacks were just lights out. Like hat tip to Darnold, he was absolutely incredible in that game. Baker as well. So sometimes you just have those games. So I wanted to warn people after, in my immediate reaction, like this is not the defense that the Bucs are going to have going forward. Don't panic. The offense did enough. You got the win.
The one outlier in all of this was 6.1 yards per rush against. Gave up 122 yards in the ground. Kenneth Walker looked phenomenal against this team. That was something that cannot happen. This team is built so well in the trenches. And by the way, entering the contest, it was like the Seahawks were a bottom 5 team yards per rush, and the Bucs were like a top 5 team yards per rush against. And they got eviscerated on the ground. That would be something where I don't know why that is, and you hope that it's not like them learning. It was a lot of kind of like outside zone stuff. I thought Cooper Kupp did a phenomenal job blocking. I thought Walker was tremendous in his burst and getting kind of to the corners. It just was very uncharacteristic of the rushing defense. I expected the secondary to get gashed a little bit, but 6.1 yards per rush, that is not a Todd Bowles staple. That is rare to see.
Well, and you had Walker with a couple of explosives, and he tends to do that in every game. What you didn't have was also the typical Kenneth Walker, I'm going to try to make something out of nothing and get hit for a 7-yard loss or a 9-yard loss. And it's something you see every game.
Not enough tackles for loss in general in the contest. And usually the rushing defense feeds into the defense as a whole, because if you want to run on an early down, well, I'm going to make it 2nd and 9 for you, and now I've already got you where I want you. But the Seahawks were just continuously chunking yards, and they were able to be balanced in that attack. And usually the Bucs can swing the pendulum and say, we're going to force you to be a pass-happy team, and at least we can play a certain way to protect against that. And in this game, they really were on their toes and couldn't get a grasp on anything. So I still say, like, big picture, I don't believe the rushing defense is all of a sudden going to cave in on itself. But it was just, I think we just saw like a really, really bad performance from the defense, and I would expect it to be better, despite the Shanahan, bump that we got to have. Even so, I don't expect it to look as bad as what we saw in Seattle.
Yeah, that rush defense is definitely going to have to be ready. You can't give up 6.1 yards to Christian McCaffrey, because the 49ers, or what's left of them, are coming to town. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. with football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it's the best way to follow along with football. It really is a great and fun way to stay locked in, even if your team isn't playing. You can make every game mean something and be even more excited to take in the action. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. The 49ers are coming to Ray J this Sunday in a showdown of 4-1 football teams, and I'm a firm believer, Evan, that Christian McCaffrey has either made a deal with the devil or he is using some sort of witchcraft, because every player on that offense is hurt except for him, which is, as we all know, not the norm. Of course, we'll know about Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall and some of the other guys later in the week when they all start
George
practicing.
Kittle.
Yeah. I don't think Kittle's going to be in play for this one. It doesn't sound like it anyway. I know that was kind of like the optimistic view from Shanahan a week or so ago, but I don't think Kittle's in play for this one. I'm much more concerned with, Pearsall and Jennings and Brock Purdy and all those guys starting to come back. But the Niners have won 4 in a row and 6 of the last 8 against the Bucs. The Bucs have not gotten a win against San Fran since 2018. As you noted, that's the pre-Todd Bowles era. So what does this team need to do to snap that skid and move to 5-1 on the season?
I mean, a little bit of ball control, first and foremost. They're going to have to bleed a little bit more clock than what we saw in Seattle, though, was a winning effort. You really want to try to limit the amount of possessions your defense is going to have to win for you. So, you certainly can't settle for too many field goals. But I would like to see just some long, sustained drives to really help that defense out. Look, the Niners are one of 2 teams this season that does not have an interception. The New York Jets are the other. The Buccaneers are +2 in the turnover battle. They only have forced 4, which is a very low amount, bottom half of the league in that category. But they've also only given up 2, which is, I believe, a top 5 mark right now. Only teams that are ahead of them have 1 turnover. So I think that you're facing a team that hasn't done a great job at takeaways. So as long as you protect the football, which you've been doing, you're going to give yourself a really good chance to win this game. And you're facing an opponent that hasn't done a great job at forcing turnovers themselves. They average about 1 fumble secured per game. That's obviously something you got to remind them about. But the Niners are also a team that if they didn't turn the ball over 4 times against Jacksonville, they could be 5-0. They also, like Tampa Bay, are living in that world of thin margins. And looking through the offensive yards per game versus the defensive yards per game, so the Buccaneers are giving up 5.3 yards per game. The Niners are giving up 5.1. The Buccaneers are gaining 5.6 yards per game. The Niners are gaining 5.4. So you have 5.4 versus 5.3, and you have 5.6 versus 5.1. Like, that's a pretty even matchup right there. It's going to come down between little things. Will there be a silly special teams mistake, right? Like, I mean, these are, turnovers, special. Like, this is a game that's going to be won on the thin margins. And the Buccaneers and the Niners have done a really good job at doing that. I would argue when he talks about thin margins, at least from a turnover perspective, that's going to tilt in Tampa Bay's favor, special teams probably in San Francisco's. So this, it's a cliche one, but this is going to come down to one or two plays. I think you and I are going to discuss the following week, saying if the Buccaneers would have done this and that, they win this game, or, because they were able to force this play and that play, that's why they're 5-1. But yeah, I see this being just another one of those nail biters. It's just going to be a common theme, at least in the first half of the season with their schedule. And, you look at the yards gained for the Niners, like 407, 389, 355, 354, 384. Like, you got to pencil in San Fran for at least 360 against this Buccaneers team yardage-wise. So Baker and the boys better show up because, red zone defense and Baker and the boys better show up. And I think you're going to have to win this in a little bit more of a shootout, a little bit lower scoring than last week. But I think it's going to also be pew, pew, pew.
Well, and we know it's going to be stressful. We know it's going to come down to the very end of the game, because why wouldn't it? But all eyes are going to be on Christian McCaffrey. We have to talk about him because he's healthy, first of all, but he's also still one of the most electric players in the NFL. And what's crazy to me, this is a guy with 669 scrimmage yards. 387 of those have come via reception, not rushes. He has yet to rush for a touchdown this year. He's got 3 receiving touchdowns, but third down.
I don't think he's rushed for more than 70 yards in a game.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 3.1 yards a carry, but he's averaging 10 yards a reception. 22 touches this season on third downs. He's converted those to first down 10 times, almost a 50% hit rate, because he's been their guy. He's been the only guy. So what, more evidence, and I know I'm going to get yelled at again, more evidence that Levante is not Levante anymore. He made the clutch play when the Bucs needed it the most, but blown coverages that led to touchdowns, missed tackle that led to a touchdown. Usually he would be the guy I would say he's got to be on McCaffrey the whole game. Just let him shadow McCaffrey and force them to beat you with somebody else. I don't know if he can do it. So how does this Bucs defense prevent McCaffrey from being the one to go off and, control this game for the Niners?
Yeah. McCaffrey is a glorified wide receiver these days. From a rushing perspective, I do not expect McCaffrey to scare the Buccaneers on the ground. As weird as that sounds, that's really not been his forte. In some respects, it looks like he's lost a little bit of juice on the ground with all his injury history, but he's still so good as a receiver. And last game against Seattle, the Buccaneers did a great job against Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet out of the backfield as receivers. They're going to have to make that a point of emphasis, and it's going to be Servassier Dennis, who is the guy. And it's been an up and down performance for him to start the season. I think we've gotten better. I think the truly atrocious plays are getting weaned out. I think you're seeing better stuff from Servassier. And as long as there's not this mistaken judgment, which there shouldn't be, with Christian McCaffrey on the field, knowing what you have to do with him, well, you should be set up well. But the Niners are going to find ways to get McCaffrey into fortuitous one-on-one matchups, and that is a little bit of a weakness for the Buccaneers. So certainly managing him, but, depending on the injury report, you might not have to worry about a Kittle. You might not have to worry about a Pearsall. We already know you're not going to have to worry about an Ayuk. Deebo Samuel's not around anymore. So, like, Kendrick Bourne was the one that went off on a Thursday night. Shout out Eastern Washington. You shouldn't be as stressed that way versus, making sure that you're doing everything you can to focus on McCaffrey. So I think that if you can enter the game with a game plan saying we are stopping Christian McCaffrey, let everybody else who can eat, then I think you're in good shape. I am going to be interested to see this relationship between I think his name is Tonjes.
Yeah, he was one I was going to bring up.
Him and Christian McCaffrey. How do you guard against both of them? Because if you take away one, I'm worried about the other. So that's your kind of your issues that you lean into. So it will be interesting to see what Todd Bowles devises.
All right. Well, we don't even have to wait for Sunday. The crystal ball is out. It's polished up. It's ready to go. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every single model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP edition of Locked On Bucs. And our predictions didn't go great for either one of us last week. It was just such a weird game.
Well, what was my
I was going to say your score was like 23-16.
I usually have these written
Yeah,
down.
22-16. And then you said Seattle's going to win the turnover battle when you made your adjustments there. I think your player was Egbuka.
Didn't I say it wasn't my player Egbuka?
Yeah, you did nail that. I can't even remember. I think my player of the game was going to be Rashad, I think is who I said.
I don't even remember I'm trying to remember what my bold was. What was my bold?
I don't remember
I'll have to go
entirely.
Whatever.
I need to start being better about.
Oh, that was okay. So last week I had originally, before I screwed it up, I was 24-23 Bucs. Emeka Egbuka player of the game, and my bold I had one score. Did I say like one score and one score? I don't know. Whatever. My bold was wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever that one score was, I can promise you it wasn't correct.
Yeah, my bold was 2 running backs were going to score touchdowns. I had 1 running back score 2 instead of 2 each scoring 1.
Yep, you screwed that up.
All right, well, let's talk about this week. Crystal ball has been taken to the cleaners. It's been professionally polished.
Yep.
Let's start things off with the bold prediction for the Bucs and Niners.
Bold prediction: there will be 1 total punt per team.
Okay, so like you said, another shootout. Not as high scoring, so I'm assuming that means, we're not going to have a bunch of 2-minute scoring drives for each team in this one.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's going to be a little bit longer. It takes a little bit longer.
So will the Bucs punt be blocked, or will they actually?
That I don't know. But hey, we got through a game here of watching them where nothing was blocked. Just now the kickoff return was terrible. So it's just a rotating door.
Yeah, that was my theory, where first couple of games it was McLaughlin and the field goal kicking. Then the next couple of games it was Dixon and the punting.
Well, to be fair, the Dixon and the punting was week 2 as well. So week one was field goal. And that was it. Everything else was actually awesome. Week 2 was field goals and punting. Week 3 was pretty much, well, I mean,
Punting.
it was kicking. It was a field goal.
Oh, yeah, it was kicking.
The field goal. And then week 4 was punting. And week 5 was kick return.
Yeah, kick coverage.
Kick coverage, thank you. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just they can't have all the special teams doing fine at the same time. That's not allowed. That's not how we do things in Tampa. All right, who is your predictive player of the game, and why is it Kindle Vildor?
Player of the game? Why reinvent the wheel? Emeka Egbuka again. They got to run the offense through him still. I think they can find ways to get yards on this Niners team. Typically the Niners have done a pretty good job, generally speaking, defensively. That no one's really popped up on them. ETN had a great game against them. Puka and Devontae Adams had a great game against them. I just think that they have something good brewing here. I'm not 100% sure if they'll nail, like if this is the Chris Godwin Jr. coming out party. I think we're not there yet. And until Egbuka proves to me that the train's going to stop, why not ride it out? Like, saddle me up for another touchdown, 6 or 7 receptions, 80 some odd yards. Like, he's going to get his. And then when Mike gets back in the fold, Bucky gets back in the fold, maybe things are differently. My other option was Rachaad White. I think that there are some dump down opportunities. I also think, once again, I posted this actually on Twitter, my Facebook, leading into the week, because Seattle struggled against tight ends, and I said this could be the Cade Otton coming out party. It was. Well, the Niners haven't done great against tight ends either this year, despite having an all-world linebacker there. So I actually think Otton's going to get some run. I don't think it'll be as explosive as it was in Seattle, but I expect him to get 4 or 5 catches again, maybe 45 yards. Maybe they hit him in the end zone, maybe they don't. But I see maybe a little bit more dinking-dunking, but Egbuka's going to find his, and so I'll just ride him.
Yeah, we're getting dangerously close to making him ineligible for player of the game because
only Baker is ineligible.
No, because
I could pick Mike every week when he was at his peak.
A couple of years ago, I think we got to a point where we weren't allowing Antoine Winfield Jr. either. Or that might have been a self-imposed for David in my preview episode, where it was like, this guy's just doing it every single week. We need to look somewhere else. Call your shot right now, though, Evan. End of season. Is Emeka Egbuka a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL?
Top 5. I'm going to say no, only because when Bucky and Mike come back and eventually Jalen McMillan, there will just be too many mouths to feed, right? I mean, go back to the 2020, 2021 offenses, right? You had Gronk, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette. Like, there wasn't anybody who was screaming off the page like dominant. They were all dominant together. They were all really good because everyone ate. So I just think that naturally when you bring in more of this talent to the offense, Egbuka is going to lose some targets naturally. The ball's going to get spread around to different spots. So that's not a demerit to him. I think it's more so me pointing to, I think this offense is going to be unreal if everyone can get healthy towards the end of the year. If you can have, Goedeke back, Bucky, Evans, McMillan, on top of Godwin Jr., who's now in midseason form, Egbuka, Baker's still balling, Rachaad White is your backup. Like, at some point, man, what are you going to do to stop him? Like, there's too much talent. There's just too much talent at some point. And like, that's why, like, Byron Leftwich was able to thrive in the system that he had under Bruce Arians. And then when he was, then when Bruce moved on, still he was able to be successful, because when you have the dudes, sometimes the execution level, man, it's going to be up here, and certain plays are just going to work itself out. Doesn't matter what you got. We're going to figure it out because we got the talent. And my dudes are better than your dudes. And it's we see it in college football a lot of the times. Those inequities, that's what it's going to be like with this offense. So long-winded answer to say no, but I still expect Egbuka to be the offensive rookie of the year.
All I heard was that the Bucs are going to score 60 points a game. All right. Bucs, Niners. Niners have won 4 in a row. Do the Bucs move to 5-1, or are they dropping to 4-2 ahead of their matchup with the Detroit Lions? How do you see this one shaking out?
So let me say this, that I think this is going to be another nail biter. I already alluded to the fact it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. And I also need to see the injury reports once again for both teams.
100%.
I at this point of recording, I do expect the same 5 to not be out there this weekend. You think about Bucky, Dean, Morrison, Evans, Izzian. Like, Izzian's the one I don't know about. That is the one, like, maybe, but I don't expect them to return, which is a problem. I'm going to go 28-27 Buccaneers. And I think it's going to come down to one of those last-minute drives, Chase McLaughlin field goal, rinse and repeat type of deal, and living on the edge. And Baker Mayfield continues to bolster his argument for MVP. So the Niners have played constantly close games. The Bucs have constantly played close games. I don't see how this isn't a close game, and I expect the offenses to do some great things. So 28-27, Buccaneers, let's ride.
All right. What do we have going on over at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app?
Remember, you can watch the Blitz. We air those every Friday night on 10 Tampa Bay Plus and our YouTube page. We also air the episode Sunday mornings on 10 Tampa Bay in the Tampa Bay area at 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning. Remember, the Buccaneers-Niners game is on our network at 4:25. That game was moved and flexed to a better position.
Jim Nance and Tony Romo on the call.
Tony! And then otherwise, the Ultimate Florida Sports Show, where we kind of talk about everything. Certainly, Lightning Panthers will be part of that discussion. Certainly, the Rays' new ownership will be part of that discussion. The Jaguars off to a 4-1 start. Big Monday Night Football win against the Chiefs. That will be something we talk about. So we have a little bit of fun there. And again, just 10 Tampa Bay Plus. You can find everything, and you can find my sportscast also at 6 and 11 on there as well.
All right. Make sure you are checking all of that out. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eKlosky WTSP, at Locked On Bucs on Instagram and TikTok. Make sure you're following on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. You want to support the show, but you don't want to be an insider. It's real easy. Like this episode on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts. It does help other Buccaneers fans find the show. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go Illini.